So welcome to the College Admissions Collaborative Highlighting Engineering and Technology College Fair. We're so excited to have you participating in this event. We have a fantastic school with us here today. My name is Nashira, and I will be your facilitator. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see you or hear you. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to the presenter at any time. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the schedule on the website. This presentation is being recorded and will be available at strivescan.com/CACHET. I'd now like to turn it over to our presenter, Tufts University.
Yes, thanks, Najira. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Well, if you are on the East Coast, to chat about Tufts and to chat about college. So what I'm hoping to do tonight is to maybe talk for about 15 minutes about Tufts, who we are, how we educate our students, what we're all about, and then reserve a bit of time for you to ask any specific questions that you have about Tufts, the admissions process, the college search process, all of that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can walk through Tufts. Hooray. So let me go ahead. Fantastic. Of course, gotta switch around those display settings. Okay, my friends, let's talk about Tufts. So hi, my name is Becky Stiles. I use the she series pronouns. I'm an associate director in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions here at Tufts. I'm also a Tufts alum. I graduated in 2012 and I studied architecture, environmental studies, and I also accidentally minored in art history because that is something that you can do in college and at Tufts. So I am going to start us off with the basics just to orient ourselves to Tufts and to give you some information at the 10,000 foot level of what we're all about. So Tufts is about 4 miles outside of downtown Boston, Massachusetts. For Tufts, we are considered both a Tier 1 research institution and also a liberal arts college. So what that means for all of you is that you are going to get access to phenomenal faculty doing phenomenal research, but you are also going to be in small classes with real access to those professors and real access to upper class students as you are navigating your educational journey at Tufts. In total, we have about 6,000 undergrads, so we're considered more of that mid-sized research institution. I personally really liked the size of Tufts when I was an undergrad because I was always seeing new people, but I was also very much seeing friends and faculty that I knew while I was walking between classes and joining different organizations. At first, since I'm from rural New Hampshire, originally from a town of 2,000 people, I thought that 6,000 was going to be this massively overwhelming size, but I honestly was really pleasantly surprised. And now as someone who has been here for over a decade, just knowing that you can build really strong community. And the fact that Tufts students and faculty are just nice people who are really excited to celebrate and support you and are so collaborative and so interdisciplinary are also reasons why I think that students are able to find friends and have space for community from day one of being on campus. This image that you see here is taken obviously facing Boston, but this is our largest undergraduate campus that we have in Medford and Somerville, Massachusetts, because actually the town line runs right in the middle of campus on Professor's Row. So we are both in Medford and Somerville. On this campus, we have students studying in our School of Arts and Sciences and our School of Engineering. Since I am sure most of you here are interested in studying STEM, you would most likely be in either the School of Engineering or the School of Arts and Sciences. We are still very interdisciplinary. So on this campus, there's extremely low walls in between our schools. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I think it's really important to understand that there is this fluidity that exists and it's never us separating students based on the school or major. If you are an electrical engineer, you might have a roommate who is an English major. If you're a religion major, your best friend might be a chemical engineer. That's a very normal thing at Tufts. And I also want to point out on our Medford and Somerville campus, it does feel like a like quote unquote traditional New England college campus with a lot of green space, a lot of brick buildings, but it is still in a relatively urban area where we are situated in neighborhoods and we have this lovely community feel. And there's a lot of overlap and work that is done in our local communities because Tufts is also an environment that is very much focused on civic engagement. And we want to make sure that we are good neighbors and are able to take advantage of the really vibrant communities and neighborhoods that directly surround Tufts. As I mentioned, we have a few different undergraduate schools. So again, Arts and Sciences is one of the undergraduate schools that you will find on our Medford and Somerville campus. The majority of students are pursuing their majors in the School of Arts and Sciences. It houses the majority of our 150 different majors and minors. We also have our School of Engineering, which has about 1,000 students in it. It's considered one of the smallest engineering schools in the country, but again, it is part of a tier 1 research institution. So you're not only part of like a super tight-knit community, but you have tremendous access to professors, internships, co-ops, and so many other opportunities. For this year's incoming class, 49% of our students in engineering identified as women, and 48% are students of color. We also have a third undergraduate school that is in Boston proper. So the campus is literally right across the street from the Museum of Fine Arts, and that is our school, the Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts. There's about 300 students here pursuing their Bachelor of Fine Arts degrees in a very conceptually driven program. Again, since Tufts is such an interdisciplinary place, you are able to take classes in any of the schools, regardless of your major. And there's especially a lot of overlap in between the STEM fields and the art offerings that we have at the SMFA. One of my favorite classes is actually co-taught by a sculpture professor and a mechanical engineering professor. That's a class on biomimicry. So using nature as inspiration for what you are designing and creating. If you are someone who chooses to apply to Tufts, you do have to apply into one of those 3 undergraduate schools: engineering, arts and sciences, or School and Museum of Fine Arts. Regardless of the program that you are admitted into, you come in undecided because we think it's kind of chaotic to be like, hello, you have not had access to colonialism studies classes. Would you like to major in this? You have not had access to biochemistry classes. Would you like to declare that as a major? We want to give you time. We want to give you access to faculty, upper class students, mentors, where you can fully explore all of the different disciplines that we have to offer before ultimately declaring your major. In the School of Engineering, our students have a semester and a half to decide what it is that they would like to major in, and students in arts and sciences have 2 full years to decide exactly what their major will be. Again, Tufts is very interdisciplinary, so 60% of our undergrads end up studying multiple things while they are here, whether that is a double major, a major minor, a major double minor. It is something that is very common at Tufts because Tufts students like to explore a lot of different things and they genuinely get excited about a lot of different academic and intellectual pursuits. So as you can see in this picture, a lot of our classes are on the smaller side. Our average class size is 23. This is obviously pre-COVID times, but this is Mike. Is this Mike Ullman? This is one of our professors in music and English. He specifically looks at the intersections of nonfiction writing and music, specifically jazz. It's like very interesting. Again, like people at Tufts combine things in really unique ways. So it's kind of cool to see that not only students have access to those different things, but faculty and the research that they've been doing sometimes for decades, because Mike has taught at Tufts for 45 years, what they have been able to accomplish. Your classes look a little bit more like this right now. So for our students, we're vaccinated, we are in person, but we still have those smaller class sizes, just a little bit more spaced out, but wanting to still get that very intimate community feel. And then some of your classes might look like this. This is one of the final classes for a ceramics class at the Museum of Fine Arts School. And for them, they had a final dinner. They invited everyone in their class and everyone in other classes. They all came together, and every single piece of silverware and servingware that you see on the table those were made by students in the class. So I think that it's this really lovely, again, community vibe on our campus where it's like, hey, we did a cool thing. We want to share that and celebrate that with one another. But of course, you are not just people in classrooms. You would like to be a human in college who has friends and who genuinely enjoys the people around them. So for us, as you saw from that aerial view, we do feel like a contained college campus. So for your first 2 years, you are required to live on campus. And for your very first year, you will only live with other first-year students. Starting your second year, you're going to have a lot more options. But regardless of where you choose to live, who you choose to live with, I think that one of the themes when you find your people at Tufts is just that, again, people are kind. They are genuinely invested and excited about not only what they are doing, but also what their friends are doing. This is a place where there is always something happening. This past, which week was it? 2 weeks ago, we had a really exciting orientation show for our first year students. And some of the seniors that I know were just so excited about it. 2 of my students are in different dance troupes on campus, Pulse, which is a classical Indian dance group, and then Envy, which is our all-female step team. And they were just so excited to share their groups with incoming first year students and then to have tryouts for first years join their groups. So there's always something happening, whether it is orientation show, whether it is a dance show. We randomly have a mime troupe on campus. So if you want to give your hand at that, go forth into the world. We are Division III when it comes to athletics. We have 28 varsity teams, 28 club teams, and way more intramural teams. We do actually have engineers on every single one of our varsity sports teams. So again, with over 300 different student organizations, Tufts is a place that does not want to box students in. If you end up being that pre-med bio student, but you still want to write for the paper and you still want to be a part of the electric racing team, do those things. We do not want to inhibit you. We want to celebrate all of the different ways that students experience their education at Tufts and want to dive into their different pathways. There are a lot of spaces on campus that are also specifically dedicated to building community and connections between many different students. One of the biggest spaces for that is our campus center. There are a bunch of different food options there. There are also a bunch of different rooms that different student organizations use. There is a really delicious beverage place. It's called The Sink. That's our student-run cafe. My favorite drink from The Sink is, it changes sometimes, but my favorite right now is the Voldemort, and that one it's a mocha coffee with a few shots of espresso. So I used to drink that a lot during finals, kept me wide awake and ready to go. And another really good one is Lucy in the chai. I forget exactly what it is. It's obviously a chai-based drink, but it's delicious. So campus center, always thriving. We also have different houses on campus as part of our DSDI, which is our Division of Student Diversity and Inclusion. That includes our Africana Center, Asian American Center, Latinx Center, LGBT Center, Women's Center, and First Center. The First Center is specifically for first generation of college students, low income students, and undocumented students. And we also have centers like the Center for STEM Diversity, which is celebrating students from many different backgrounds and having a very equity and justice focus and lens when thinking about how to support students at Tufts who have been historically excluded from STEM disciplines. There's also a bunch of different seminars and discussion groups that are run by many different centers at Tufts. I personally found a lot of community within the Women's Center, and there's like peer mentorship programs through each of the centers for first year students. So just know from the get-go, we want to make sure that you are able to find friends, like find space for yourself and help yourself grow as a person and as a scholar. This is a slide that I took from a presentation that I did for some of our class of 2025 students who are now on campus, but this is the spring once they receive their admission decision. And I was just like, hey, why Tufts? Like, why is this a place that you applied and are potentially excited to attend? And I think it's not a surprise that community is really at the center of it. I think honestly, sometimes schools can start to sound the same in like the resources and other things that they offer, but I think the people who compose their faculty and their student body are what makes each of them unique. So I think for Tufts, that kindness, that inclusivity, a focus on social justice and interdisciplinary collaborative education are things that really stand out for quite a few folks who end up applying to Tufts and coming to Tufts. My favorite part about this little word cloud also is that very sneaky little elephant emoji that's just like hanging out in the sea of community. It just like makes me happy whenever I see it. Very importantly, we meet 100% of demonstrated need for all of our students, regardless of citizenship status. So this does include our undocumented friends, documented friends, and international students. There are only about 70 or 80 schools in the United States that meet 100% of demonstrated need. Each school actually counts demonstrated need differently. So I would highly recommend for any school that you're thinking of applying to, fill out the net price calculator for each school to figure out what your cost of attendance might look like at each of those schools. Because for the vast majority of students, you're not actually going to pay full sticker price for what those schools are saying. So fill out the net price calculator to kind of get a handle on what your cost might actually look like. For Tufts, if a family makes less than $60,000 a year, there are not going to be any loans in your package. So what that essentially means is it's just going to be grant money, which you don't have to pay back. And that's kind of equivalent to a full ride. So we are making sure that for our students, Tufts is an affordable option for them. Tufts was actually cheaper for me to attend than my local public in-state school. So when you're thinking about schools that you're applying to, make sure you also have a variety of schools. It's not just all students who have merit aid or all students who meet, all schools who meet 100% of demonstrated need. Make sure you have a variety, because sometimes for those merit schools, especially, sometimes you don't know what you're going to get till you get it. Tufts also accepts the Common Application, Coalition Application, and QuestBridge applications. Again, we accept all three when you are applying. So at the end of the day, who are we? Jumbos. Jumbo the elephant is our mascot. Jumbos are nice people, I pinky promise. They are collaborative. They are very socially conscious. Fun fact, all of our engineers are actually required to take 8 classes in the School of Arts and Sciences. And for that reason, a lot of them end up minoring in arts and sciences. The 2 most popular minors for our engineers are entrepreneurship for social impact and Spanish. We're also agents of change, both locally and globally, and we're humble. We love that. We're doing incredible scholarship, you know, but we're down to earth about it. And I think those are the nice, kind, right people that you want to be around. And then that's my email address. Hooray. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Hooray, friends. Okay, but again, this time is for you. So I'm giving you that brief overview of Tufts, what we're all about, but I want to hear from you. In the Q&A, please feel free to put any questions that you have, and I will make my way through. And I'm also happy to put additional links, additional pieces of information in the chat to help you as you continue learning about Tufts. Again, please feel free, put it in the Q&A, and I will start going through them. I'll give you a minute to type. I can also show you, this is my little screensaver. Roy. Okay, type, anything, my friends. Okay, great question, Joseph. So Joseph is asking, what is the core required curriculum? So the nice thing about Tufts is that we actually don't have a core curriculum. I'll talk specifically about arts and sciences and engineering. So in arts and sciences, what we have is called our foundation and distribution requirements. The foundation requirements are essentially an English class, a world civilization class that is being morphed into a social justice class, and you have a language requirement as well. You can place up into it. You can divide it in between culture classes taught in English and a language. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. There is a lot of room for exploration. So over your 4 years at Tufts, if you are in arts and sciences, you are probably going to take anywhere between 34 and 36 classes. A major is only 10 to 12 classes. And when we're thinking about the requirements that we have for students, there's a lot of choice embedded in it. Everything counts towards something. The broader thing that we tie to the curriculum for arts and sciences students are the HAS and M requirements. So essentially taking 2 classes at each of the following areas: humanities, arts, social sciences, natural sciences, and math. And again, everything counts towards something. So if you are someone who does want to take Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3 as part of your math requirement, do that. You can absolutely do that. If you are someone who's like, you know what, I really want to take logic and philosophy, and I'm also really excited about taking geometry to understand how to combat gerrymandering, those are also math credits. So just know in college, there's so many more options for how you are thinking about things like math, science, social sciences, and know that at Tufts especially, we're building in a lot of options so that you have control over your educational trajectory. For engineering, we have 16 different majors, the majority of which are ABET accredited, meaning that there is going to be a lot more, not rigidity, but there are more foundational engineering requirements within the School of Engineering, specifically those foundational math and science classes like Chem 1, Physics 11, Math 32. So those are like our ways of saying like Physics 1, Calc 1, etc. However, within our School of Engineering, you still have a lot of wiggle room to explore. Like I mentioned, you still have those 8 classes in arts and sciences that you need to complete as an engineer. And once you get past the foundational requirements for your specific major, you have a lot of electives built in. So for example, if you're a biomedical engineer, you will have BME core electives where, yes, you will have a few of those core electives, but you get to choose which classes you actually take, right? So you have 5 classes, but you have many options for each of those cores that you have to take. So just know there's a lot of flexibility. You are never restricted from taking classes outside of your major or outside of your school. So we want to make sure that however you want to explore, you have access to exploring, and that means we do not have a core curriculum. Oh, Annie, great question. So talk about some of the research projects that students get to work on. So many different ones. So 60% of our undergrads end up doing research by the time they graduate. So it is something that is very inherent and very at the core of a lot of what our undergraduates do. I think the really nice thing about Tufts and the Medford Somerville campus specifically is that it is majority undergraduate students, meaning that our faculty very actively rely on having undergrads in their research spaces. I would be very hard pressed to think of a research group on campus that did not have any undergrads in it. Some labs have exclusively undergrads, some labs have 50-50 split between grad and undergrad. So I think it's really exciting to think about the possibilities of who you get to interact with and in what capacity you get to interact with them in. Let's talk, there's so many options for different research projects. Okay. Let's start with one of my favorite labs in electrical and computer engineering. It's run by Tom Vandervelde, and there are undergrads that work directly on this project with him. His lab, and also I'm about to say so many acronyms and I apologize, but this is what colleges do so much. They love a good acronym that spells out a word. So Tom's lab is REAP, which is Renewable Energy and Applied Photonics. And Tom's lab is specifically thinking about the creation of efficient photovoltaic cells. So for him specifically, he is thinking, okay, right now, when we think of systems that are generating energy and electricity, take a car, for example, only 20% of the energy that is created by the gasoline in the engine is actually used to move a car forward. 20%, that's it. The other 80% is lost as heat energy. So with thermophotovoltaics, if you can capture that heat energy and produce electricity from that, that is going to open up so many new avenues of efficiency and better utilizing energy that we literally can't utilize to its fullest right now. And Tom's lab, with the undergrads in that lab as well, they are partnering with NASA to create a series of thermophotovoltaic cells that are going to be on a shuttle that is making its way to Venus over the next few years. So that's like one example. We also have students like Renee, who is an environmental engineer, and she is really interested in the intersections of social justice and environmental engineering, specifically when there are major infrastructural projects. The example that I will lean on right now is that in Boston right now, they are extending one of the subway lines, the green lines, and it's coming to Tufts. So on the surface, great, they're extending the subway line, hooray. With an extended subway line, with more trains coming and going, there is going to be more pollution immediately in the vicinity of where those subway lines are now going. And Renee's research is specifically looking at the disproportionate impact of that pollution and those fine air particulates on low-income communities and communities of color. A lot of the work that she's doing is not just for environmental engineering, but it is also for her Tisch College project. So we have a college called the Tisch College of Civic Life, and it looks at the research/academic point of it looks at the research and academic specifically tied to civic engagement and community service projects. So a lot of really cool things. We also have students engaged in things like, I'll talk about Aman. Again, there's so many students to talk about. Aman specifically looks at, she's a community health and bio double major. She's looking at inequities that exist in the healthcare system and how access to good healthcare varies tremendously by the race and ethnicity of expecting moms. And she is specifically looking at access to good healthcare for Black moms. What else? There's so many. We have students like STEM students who are just doing things that are not STEM. So like Tufts is also a place where you can explore that if you wanted to do research that is related to STEM, but also not related to STEM. One of my favorite examples of that is one of our biochemistry students was an international student from Macedonia, and he is just super interested in national policy. So he started a project looking at the mass movement of refugees through Macedonia and how their movement was directly impacted by policies, excuse me, created by the federal government of Macedonia. And he got funding through our Institute of Global Leadership, or IGL, to go to Macedonia to talk to government officials and to also talk to refugees. Literally, I could go on and on. I'm going to put a little, sorry, I have to look at my monitors up here. Tufts research admissions, and we have like really cool examples. Another great STEM person on this website is Becky Lee. She is a human factors engineer, and she is awesome. So if you want to know even more about research, go forth. And Francis, thank you. I see a couple of questions there. I'm going to go to the second one first. So for Joseph's question earlier, when he was asking about the requirements, I am seeing just a follow-up question regarding the fulfillment of the language requirement. So you cannot fulfill that requirement just through culture classes. You can either do like half and half or like more language classes than culture classes. So for example, you could take 3 semesters of a language class. Like for example, I did Spanish 1, 2, and 3, and then you could do 3 semesters of culture classes. So I did Russian culture and specifically took Russian literature classes taught in English. Some folks test right out of a language requirement. So maybe you are someone who has taken through AP Spanish and you test out of Spanish 3 and they say, oh, you would place into Spanish 4. In that case, you have checked off the language specific requirements. So in that scenario, hypothetically, you could fulfill it with culture classes after that. But a lot of Tufts students really like the language requirement because, again, we are an institution that is thinking very globally, and half of our junior class goes abroad every single year. And we have incredibly robust study abroad programs for our students, in addition to an international campus in France. So for us, it is a very core part of the experience, and a lot of students are really excited to engage with that. The language requirement just exists for arts and sciences students and not engineering students. So thank you for that question, Francis. And your second one, question about research, especially for bio students. So what is the process an undergrad student would take if they're looking to join a lab, and how early? Literally all that it takes is emailing a professor and saying, hey, you're doing cool stuff. Can I join? 9 out of 10 times a faculty member will say, great, yes, absolutely, please join my space. And Tufts professors are also really good about connecting you with other faculty. If they don't have space in their particular group because of funding or just all their seats are taken, they will point you in the direction of other colleagues who are doing really incredible things. You can absolutely do it as early as your very first year. Very common on our campus. I usually tell my advisees, like, just wait a semester, learn how to do college, transition to college life first, make friends, like enjoy, and then do that deeper dive into more organizations, more research, internships, all of that fun stuff. But yes, absolutely. We even, chaotically enough, a few years ago, the best story that I have from our Dean of Engineering, he was walking through one of our buildings pre-COVID, so maybe two and a half years ago now, over the summer, and he saw a handful of students just like hanging out in a hallway, and one of those cliche, this is a college hallway, there is a giant whiteboard, we are writing formulas on said whiteboard. So these students were like talking, whiteboard, and Dean Q walks up and just says, hey, what you working on? What's going on? And they were like, oh yeah, we're working in this lab that's specifically looking at the application of inverted pendulum, like especially thinking about how can we better stabilize things like segways and machinery like that. And they kept chit-chatting. And Dean Q like asked their names, like where are they from, like what year are you, what major are you? And the students just go, oh, we're actually incoming students. We're just local, and we wanted, I don't know why my calendar is going like crazy right now. We just wanted to start now, and we reached out to a professor, and we don't start classes until like a month from now, but we're just getting started early. So those are students who started researching even before they actually matriculated at Tufts. So yeah, that's like how friendly Tufts is for thinking about research as an undergrad. Any other questions, my friends? I'm also going to put my email in the chat. I am also going to put the admissions office staff members in the chat, since every person, depending on where you go to high school, you'll have an admissions officer, a different admissions officer assigned to you. I read applications for students who attend school in the state of New Hampshire, Mercer and Somerset counties in Jersey, the Cape in Massachusetts, Nebraska, Iowa, the Dakotas, Michigan, and Minnesota. Is that it? That's it, yeah. So I'm gonna put in the chat by region, so you can like click on your state, click on your country, and you'll be able to access. But anything else? Okay, I'm gonna give it 30 more seconds. Okay. Well then, thank you all for joining tonight. 6:30 here if you're on the West Coast, a little bit earlier, which is nice. But Nashira, I'll turn it over to you for that last slide.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. So thank you for joining us. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 5-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback that you have. We encourage you to check back at the schedule and sign up for more sessions. You'll find this session's recording as well as all of the other session recordings at strivescan.com/CACHET. Thank you and have a great one.